At 11 p.m. on October 31st, 1967, Padre Pio was praying alone in the chapel of the San Giovanni Rotondo convent when something extraordinary occurred. According to the testimony of Brother Albert, who was on watch that night, Padre Pio stopped in mid-prayer, glanced at the clock, and declared loudly, "It is now, the last hour of mercy before midnight. Whoever doesn't shield themselves now will face the storm unprotected." He rose, approached the altar, retrieved 3 objects he kept there, and stated, "These 3, only these 3, together, they form a shield that no dark force can penetrate. Separated, they offer protection. Together, they represent invincibility." 1 year later, Padre Pio would pass away, but that 11 p.m. revelation on October 31st would endure as one of the most powerful instructions he ever imparted regarding spiritual protection. If you're watching this and it's still hours before 11 p.m. today, you have time to prepare the 3 objects. If you're watching this with only minutes to spare before 11 p.m., there's still time to do the bare minimum. And if you're watching this after 11 p.m. or after October 31st, stick around until the end, because there's an adapted version of this protocol that works in any moment of spiritual crisis. In the next few minutes, you'll discover what the 3 sacred objects are that Padre Pio kept on the altar. You'll understand why 11 p.m. specifically, and not 10 p.m. or midnight. You'll learn the complete protocol of how to position these 3 objects in your home exactly at 11 p.m. on October 31st. And you'll see documented cases of families who did this and experienced what Padre Pio called a sphere of domestic invincibility during the most spiritually dangerous night of the year. But before revealing the 3 objects, I need to tell you the full story of how this revelation came to us. Because what Padre Pio said at 11 p.m. on that night of October 31st, 1967, was no accident. It was the culmination of decades of observing spiritual battles and discovering which weapons truly work. To you who feel that your home is under spiritual attack, to you who have already tried various prayers and protections, but nothing seems to hold, to you who know there's something different about the night of October 31st and want to truly protect yourself, to you who are tired of theories and want a practical method that works, you've come to the right place, because Padre Pio didn't leave philosophy. He left protocol. And protocol is exactly what you're about to receive. Why 11 p.m.? Because it's the last hour before midnight. And midnight on October 31st is what theologians of the Church call the point of maximum spiritual inversion. It's when demonic activity permitted by God reaches its annual peak. Not because God wants it, but because humanity celebrates, even unknowingly, a date of pagan origin without spiritual protection. And 11 p.m. is the last window of preparation. It's when you can still seal your home before the storm arrives. After 11 p.m., you're in resistance mode. Before 11 p.m., you're in prevention mode, and prevention is always more powerful than reaction. The Baker family, from Boston, discovered this the hard way in October of 1968. Michael Baker was 52 years old and a successful businessman. His wife, Emily, was an elementary school teacher. Their 4 children were between 12 and 21 years old. They were a typical Catholic family. They attended Mass on Sundays. They prayed before meals. They had crucifixes in the house. But they lacked deep knowledge about spiritual warfare, and they certainly knew nothing about the 11 p.m. protocol that Padre Pio had revealed only a year prior. On the night of October 31st, 1968, just 5 weeks after Padre Pio's death, the Baker family was at home like any other night. The children were doing homework. Emily was preparing dinner. Michael was reading the newspaper in the living room. It was exactly 11 p.m. when something began to change in the atmosphere. Emily was the first to notice. She was chopping vegetables in the kitchen when she felt a sharp drop in temperature. It wasn't a normal cold. It was a cold that came from within, as if someone had injected ice into her veins. She glanced at the window, thinking she had left it open, but it was closed. She looked at the thermostat in the house. It read 72 degrees, a normal temperature. But what she felt was at least 10 degrees colder. At the same moment, upstairs, the youngest daughter, Mary, who was 12 years old, dropped her pen and ran screaming from the room. She ran downstairs shouting for her mother. "Mom, there's someone in my room. I saw a shadow in the window." Michael dropped the newspaper and ran upstairs. He checked the room. Nothing. He checked the window. Locked. He checked under the bed, inside the closet. Everything normal. But as he turned to leave the room, he felt the same thing that Emily had felt, that inexplicable cold, and more than that, a presence, as if someone invisible was there, watching. Michael was a rational man. He didn't believe in ghost stories. But at that moment, at 11:08 p.m. on the night of October 31st, 1968, something inside him said, "This isn't natural. This is spiritual." He went downstairs, gathered the family in the living room, and said, "Let's pray the rosary now, all together." Emily thought it was strange. Michael had never proposed praying the rosary outside of the usual time, but she agreed. They began to pray at 11:45 p.m. And as they prayed, things worsened. The lights in the house began to flicker. They didn't go out completely, but they flickered at an irregular rhythm. A painting that was hanging on the living room wall fell on its own. It didn't slip. It fell as if someone had pushed it. And then came the sound. A dragging sound, as if something heavy was being dragged upstairs. Everyone heard it. Everyone froze in the middle of the Hail Mary. Michael stood up. "I'll stay here with you. I'm not going up. Let's finish the rosary." And they continued praying, but fear was on everyone's face, especially when midnight struck, because exactly at midnight on October 31st, 1968, the dragging sound upstairs intensified. The lights flickered more violently. And for the first time in 20 years of marriage, Michael saw his wife Emily crying in fear. They prayed the entire rosary. They prayed another and another. And only when dawn broke, at 6 a.m. on November 1st, did the atmosphere return to normal. The lights stopped flickering, the cold disappeared, the sound from upstairs ceased. But the Baker family was marked. None of them slept that night, and when dawn broke, Michael made a decision. We will never go through what we went through tonight again without being prepared. 3 days later, on November 3rd, 1968, Michael Baker made his way to San Giovanni Rotondo. He was desperate to speak with someone who knew Padre Pio, someone who might have some guidance on spiritual protection, especially on dates like October 31st. It was there that he met Brother Albert, the very same Brother Albert who had kept vigil on the night of October 31st, 1967. When Padre Pio revealed the secret of the 3 sacred objects, when Michael recounted the terrifying events at his home, Brother Albert slowly shook his head. "You're not the first to come here with such a tale. In the past 48 hours, 7 different families have arrived, all with similar stories, always on the night of October 31st, always between 11 p.m. and 3 a.m. And they all say the same thing: we prayed, but it wasn't enough. Do you know why? Because prayer without preparation is defense without a shield. You were praying unarmed." Michael was puzzled. "But Father, I prayed 3 rosaries. How is that unarmed? Brother Albert replied, "Let me tell you something Padre Pio said exactly 1 year ago, on the night of October 31st, 1967. I was there. I heard it with my own ears, and to this day, I remember every word." And then he told Michael about the revelation of the 3 objects, about the 11 p.m. protocol, about what Padre Pio called the shield of invincibility, a divinely ordained defense against the darkness. Michael pulled a notebook from his pocket and began to write down every detail. And when Brother Albert finished explaining, Michael asked, "But why didn't Padre Pio share this more widely? Why keep it so restricted?" Brother Albert sighed, because he knew that most people wouldn't take it seriously until they experienced what you experienced. Until they felt real fear, until they realized that there is a spiritual battle that can't be ignored. Padre Pio used to say, "Those who need it will find it, and when they find it, they will obey." You've found it, Michael. Now will you obey? Michael nodded. "I'll do exactly as Padre Pio instructed, next year and every year thereafter." And that's precisely what he did. In October of 1969, Michael prepared everything in advance. He acquired the 3 objects exactly as Brother Albert had described. He taught the protocol to his family, and at 11 p.m. on October 31st, 1969, the Baker family executed the entire ritual for the first time. The difference was astounding. Not a single light flickered, not a single picture fell, not a single strange sound from upstairs. The family prayed the rosary at 11:30 p.m. as part of the protocol, but this time it was different. It wasn't a prayer of panic. It was a prayer of authority, because they weren't just praying. They were protected. They had the shield. When dawn broke on November 1st, 1969, Michael gathered his family in the living room and said, "What we experienced last year was terror. What we experienced tonight was peace, and the difference between the two was obedience to a simple instruction that Padre Pio left behind. We will never forget this." But the story doesn't end there. Because Michael, following the example of Giuseppe Lombardi, who had documented the 7 Windows protocol, decided to write a detailed account of the 11 p.m. protocol. He sent this account to the Vatican in January of 1970, and that document was archived along with other similar testimonies under the title Padre Pio's Revelation, the 11 p.m. Protocol, Shield Against Dark Forces. But even more impressively, in the years that followed, 3 other cases reached the Vatican, confirming exactly the same protocol, and they all had one thing in common. They discovered Padre Pio's revelation at the very moment they needed it most. The second case was from the Rossi family of Rome in 1971. Claudia Rossi was a widow, raising 3 children alone. She worked as a nurse at the Central Hospital in Rome and had irregular shifts. In October of 1971, she was working late on the 31st and didn't get home until 10 p.m. She knew it was Halloween night, but paid it no mind. She thought it was just an American holiday with no spiritual significance. But when she arrived home that night, her 3 children were terrified. The oldest, 16, said, "Mom, ever since it got dark, we've been hearing knocking on the windows. We've checked 3 times. There's no one outside, but the knocking keeps happening." Claudia, exhausted from her shift, initially dismissed it as the wind. But when she herself heard the rhythmic, metallic, intentional knocking, she knew it wasn't the wind. Claudia was a devout Catholic. She took holy water that she always kept at home and began sprinkling it on the windows while praying. The knocking stopped for a few minutes, but then returned. She lit a blessed candle. Same result. It would stop and then return. And that's when she did something that would change everything. She called a friend who knew one of the Capuchin friars from San Giovanni Rotondo. It was 11:12 p.m. when the phone rang at the friar's house. Claudia quickly explained the situation, and the friar, who knew of Padre Pio's revelation, said, "You still have 48 minutes. There's still time. Do you have 3 sacred objects in your home? A wooden crucifix, blessed salt, and a rosary?" Claudia replied, "I have a crucifix and a rosary. I don't have blessed salt." The friar was direct. "Then use ordinary salt and ask God to bless it right now. In an emergency, faith supplants form. Write down what you need to do." And the friar taught Claudia over the phone the entire 11 p.m. protocol. She wrote everything down, hung up the phone at 11:22 p.m., and immediately began to execute it. She gathered her 3 children, quickly explained what they were going to do, took the crucifix, the rosary, and the salt, and at 11:30 p.m. began the ritual. Claudia positioned the crucifix on the front door, exactly as the friar had instructed, placed a line of salt at the 3 main entrances of the house, held the rosary in her hand, and began to pray the specific prayer that the friar had taught her. And while she prayed, something extraordinary happened. The knocking on the windows intensified violently. It was as if whatever was out there knew it was losing access. The intensity lasted for exactly 3 minutes. And then, complete silence. The knocking stopped. The atmosphere changed. It was as if an invisible curtain had fallen over the house, separating the inside from the outside, protecting, sealing. Claudia's children felt the change immediately. The youngest, 9 years old, said, "Mom, it feels like someone put thick glass around the house. We're still here, but whatever's out there can't get in anymore." Claudia embraced her 3 children and cried, not from fear, from relief, from gratitude. Because she had done at 11:30 p.m. what needed to be done at 11 p.m., and even with a half-hour delay, it worked. The third case happened in 1975 with the Baker family from Boston. Michael Baker was a lawyer, and his wife Emily was a doctor. They had 2 14-year-old twin sons. They were an intellectual family, highly educated, but also deeply Catholic. Michael had studied theology as a hobby, and he had an extensive library on Catholic spirituality. In September of 1975, Michael was doing research for an article he was writing about Padre Pio when he came across an obscure reference in an archived document about the 11 p.m. protocol. The reference was vague, but it piqued his curiosity. He began to investigate. He wrote to the Vatican, he requested access to related documents, and in mid-October of 1975, he received a copy of Francesco Martelli's testimony about the complete protocol. Michael read that document 3 times, and then he showed it to Emily. "Do you think this is real, or is it superstition?" Emily, with her medical and scientific background, responded, "I don't know if it's real, but I do know that Padre Pio was a recognized saint. And saints don't teach superstition. If he said it works, there's probably something to it." Michael agreed. "Then let's test it, scientifically. Let's do exactly as it's described, and let's observe if there's a tangible effect." And that's exactly what they did. On October 31st, 1975, at 11 p.m., the Baker family executed the protocol with surgical precision. Michael had prepared the 3 objects a week in advance. He had studied every detail of the instruction. He had timed every step, and when they started at 11 p.m., he was holding a notebook, noting everything down as if it were a lab experiment. The family wasn't under any visible spiritual attack. There were no bangs on the windows, no inexplicable cold, no obvious signs. Michael was testing if the protocol had a preventative effect, not just a reactive one. And what they experienced was something Michael described as a domestic atmospheric alteration with no physical explanation. In Michael's notes from that night, he wrote, 11:32 p.m. We finished positioning the three objects. There's no visible change, but there is a sensory change. It's like the air inside the house has become denser, more solid. As if we've created an invisible barrier. Emily confirms the same perception. The twins say they feel safer, but they can't explain why. Michael continued, 11:45 p.m. We started praying the rosary according to the protocol. During the prayer, both twins reported feeling a warmth in their chest, as if something warm had been placed there. It's not physical heat. It's a sensation of internal warmth. Emily and I feel the same. And then, at midnight, exactly 12 a.m., the sensation of an invisible barrier has intensified. It's difficult to describe with scientific words something that is clearly spiritual. But if I had to use a metaphor, I'd say it's like being inside a bubble of protection. You see through it, but you know it's there. The Baker family spent the entire night awake, not out of fear, but out of scientific curiosity. They wanted to observe, to document, to understand. And when dawn broke, Michael wrote his conclusion. I can't explain the mechanism scientifically, but I can empirically confirm the effect. The 11 p.m. protocol produces a tangible result of spiritual protection. I recommend annual execution as a preventative measure. Michael sent his notes to the Vatican, along with a letter asking that the protocol be more widely publicized. The response he received was diplomatic but clear. We appreciate your documentation. The protocol remains archived as an approved but unpromoted private revelation. Those who need it will find it. Those who find it will obey it. The fourth case, documented in 1978, was perhaps the most dramatic. The Kowalski family lived in Krakow, Poland. It was the era of the communist regime. The church was under pressure. Religious practices were discouraged. But the Kowalski family kept their faith a secret, as many Polish families did. Stefan Kowalski was an engineer. His wife, Marta, was a teacher. They had an 18-year-old daughter named Zofia. In October of 1978, Zofia began to have terrible nightmares. Every night, always the same dream, a dark figure at her bedroom window, trying to get in. She would wake up screaming. The parents initially thought it was stress from her studies, but when the nightmares intensified specifically in the weeks leading up to October 31st, Marta began to suspect it was something more. Marta had a friend who had connections with the underground church. This friend knew a priest who had studied in Rome and was familiar with the archives about Padre Pio. When Marta told him about her daughter's nightmares, the priest immediately said, "This is progressive spiritual attack, and it will intensify on the 31st. But there's a protocol. Padre Pio left it behind. Do you have the courage to do it?" Marta, desperate to help her daughter, replied, "I'll do anything." And the priest taught her the 11 p.m. protocol, but with an additional detail. Because Zofia wasn't a child, she was an adult. And attacks against adults require the person themselves to execute the protocol, not just the parents. On October 31st, 1978, at 10 p.m., Marta explained everything to Zofia. The daughter, initially skeptical, agreed to try it just to give her mother peace of mind. They prepared the three objects, and at 11 p.m., Zofia positioned each one as instructed. When she finished positioning the last object, at 11:27 p.m., something happened that Zofia would never forget. She felt like an invisible weight that had been on her for weeks had finally been lifted. She later described it as feeling like you can take a deep breath for the first time in a month. That night, For the first time in weeks, Zofia slept without nightmares. And she never had that specific dream of the figure at the window again. Years later, in 1995, when Zofia was an adult and living in France, she wrote a testimony about that night. She said, "I was skeptical. I thought it was psychological. But when you feel instant relief after weeks of torment, you know it's not a placebo. It's real, it's spiritual, and it works." Now you've heard 4 different cases, 4 families, 4 contexts, 4 decades, and they all report the same thing: tangible protection when they follow the 11 p.m. protocol. But I haven't yet told you what the 3 objects are, and that's what I'm going to reveal now, word for word, object by object, exactly as Padre Pio kept them on the altar, and as Brother Albert taught them to Francesco Martelli. The first object is a wooden crucifix. It can't be plastic, it can't be metal, it has to be wooden. Padre Pio was specific about this, because the wood, it represents the original cross of Christ. It represents a connection to the real sacrifice. It represents death and resurrection. The crucifix doesn't need to be large. It can be small, the size of your hand. But it needs to be made of wood, and it needs to have been blessed by a priest. If you don't have a blessed wooden crucifix, you can use a regular wooden crucifix and ask God to bless it yourself at 11 p.m. In an emergency, faith supplants form. God honors a sincere intention. The second object is blessed salt, not holy water. Salt. Why? Because salt is a symbol of purification and preservation. It's mentioned in Scripture as an element of covenant. Christ called his disciples the salt of the earth. And Padre Pio discovered, through decades of spiritual battle, that blessed salt has a specific property of creating a physical barrier against evil spiritual manifestations. The salt needs to have been blessed by a priest. If you don't have blessed salt, you can take regular table salt and ask God to bless it right now. Use about 3 tablespoons. That's enough for the 3 main entrances to your house. The third object is a rosary, not just any rosary, a rosary that's already been prayed with. Padre Pio said that new rosaries, kept in drawers, don't have the same spiritual potency as used rosaries. Each Hail Mary prayed charges that rosary with accumulated prayer. It's like a spiritual battery. The more you pray with that rosary, the more power it accumulates. If you have a rosary that belonged to your grandmother, use that one. If you have a rosary that you've carried for years, use that one. If you only have a new rosary, that's okay. But pray at least 1 decade with it before 11 p.m. That already charges the rosary with intention. These are the 3 objects: wooden crucifix, blessed salt, prayed with rosary. Together, they form what Padre Pio called the Trinity of Home Protection. Each one represents a dimension. The crucifix represents Christ, the salt represents the purification of the Holy Spirit, and the rosary represents the intercession of Mary. Complete Trinity, complete protection. Now comes the protocol. How you position these 3 objects at 11 p.m. on October 31st. Pay attention, because every detail matters. First step, at 10:45 p.m. Gather your family in the main living area of the house. If you live alone, do it alone. But ideally, every resident of the house should participate. Briefly explain what you're going to do. We're going to protect our house, following guidance that Padre Pio left. Everyone will have a function. You don't need to go into scary details. Keep the tone of faith, not fear. Second step, at 10:50 p.m., place the 3 objects on a clean table. It doesn't need to be a special table. It can be the living room table or the kitchen table. The important thing is that the three objects are together and visible. Crucifix in the center, salt on the right side, rosary on the left side. This arrangement represents order, Christ in the center, purification on the right, intercession on the left. Third step, at 10:55 p.m., begin to pray an Our Father over the three objects. While praying, place your right hand over the three objects. If there are more people, each one places their hand, forming a chain. This prayer is consecration. You're saying, these objects aren't amulets, they're symbols of divine protection. We use them with faith, not with superstition. Fourth step, exactly at 11 p.m., take the wooden crucifix and go to the main entrance of the house. Position the crucifix at the door. It can be hung above the door if there's already a nail. It can be leaned against the threshold if there's nowhere to hang it. It can be held against the door for 30 seconds. If there's no way to fix it, the important thing is the contact between the crucifix and the door, and while positioning it, pray aloud, "In the name of Jesus Christ crucified, this entrance is sealed. No dark force will pass through here tonight." Fifth step, at 11:05 p.m., take the blessed salt, go to the main entrance, and make a continuous line of salt on the threshold, from one side to the other. It doesn't need to be a thick line. A thin line is sufficient. The salt creates a visible, physical barrier. And while placing the salt, pray, by the power of blessed salt, this entrance is purified and protected. What is impure will not cross this line. Sixth step, repeat the salt process at the next two most important entrances of the house. If you have a house with multiple doors, prioritize the front door, the back door, and the garage door, or side entrance. These are the three main openings. If you have fewer than 3 doors, use the remaining salt on the main windows. The principle is the same. Create a visible, physical barrier. Seventh step, at 11:15 p.m., return to the main living area. Take the rosary, hold it in your right hand, and begin to pray a complete rosary. It doesn't need to be all 15 mysteries. It can be just one rosary of 5 decades. But pray with faith, not with haste. While praying, walk through the house. Enter each room. Let the prayer of the rosary fill each space. You are spiritually sealing what you've already sealed physically. Eighth step, when you finish the rosary and return to the main living area and place the rosary on the table, where the 3 objects were, leave it there throughout the night. Don't put it away. Don't put it in your pocket. Leave it visible. The prayed with rosary radiates continuous protection while it's exposed. Ninth step, at 11:45 p.m., gather the family again. Offer a final prayer of thanksgiving. Thank God for the protection. Thank Padre Pio for the revelation. Thank Our Lady for her intercession. This anticipatory gratitude is an act of faith. You're thanking them for the protection, even before you need it. 10th step, go to sleep in peace. Don't stay awake waiting for something to happen. Don't keep vigil in fear. You've done what needed to be done. Now trust. The protection is active. The shield is raised. And as Padre Pio said, he who obeys sleeps peacefully. He who disobeys watches in fear. That's the complete protocol. 10 steps, simple but precise, and it works. You just heard 4 cases that prove it. But there's one thing I need to tell you now, with all honesty. If you do this exactly as Padre Pio taught, you won't necessarily see supernatural lights. You won't necessarily feel chills or mystical heat. What you will feel is peace, an inexplicable peace, the inner certainty that your house is covered. And that peace is the greatest sign that the protection is working. Now, if you want this revelation to continue reaching more people, If you want to support this work of rescuing forgotten teachings of Padre Pio, there's the Super Thanks button down below. You just received a protocol that families paid dearly to learn, families who experienced terror before discovering it. You're receiving this information now without having to go through what they did. And if this resonates with you, if you feel this could protect your family, the Super Thanks feature is a way to say, "This truth saved my home. I need it to continue saving others." Because videos like this aren't favored by algorithms. Deep spiritual content doesn't generate easy clicks, but it generates real transformation. And each Super Thanks is a vote that you want more true protection, not empty religious entertainment. You become a guardian of these revelations when you support this channel, and Padre Pio sees that from heaven. But now, there's a question I know is on your mind. What if I've already missed 11 p.m.? What if today is already November 1st or November 10th and I missed the window? Is there no more protection for me? Take a breath. There is. Padre Pio left an adapted version of this protocol that works in any moment of spiritual crisis, and that's what I'm going to teach you right now. If you missed 11 p.m. on October 31st, you can still protect your home, but the protocol changes slightly. First change, choose any Friday afternoon at 3 p.m. Why? Because 3 p.m. on Friday is the hour of Christ's death on the cross. It's the hour of maximum mercy. It's the second most powerful spiritual window after 11 p.m. on Halloween. If today isn't Friday, wait until the next one. If you're in a spiritual crisis now and can't wait, then do it today at 3 p.m. Regardless of the day of the week, God honors sincere urgency. Second change. Before positioning the three objects, make an act of contrition. Acknowledge before God, "Lord, I didn't know, but now I do, and I'm doing what I can with what I have." Accept my obedience, even outside the ideal time. This transforms the protocol from preventative to redemptive. You're not just protecting yourself, you're repenting for having left your home unprotected. Third change, use the same three objects, but add a fourth, holy water. If you don't have holy water, take ordinary water and ask God to bless it. Holy water adds a dimension of continuous purification. After positioning the crucifix, the salt, and praying the rosary, sprinkle holy water in each room of the house while praying, "Lord, purify this home. Expel what is not yours. Seal what is yours." That's the emergency protocol. It's not as powerful as doing it at 11 p.m. on October 31st, but it works. Padre Pio said that divine mercy has no fixed date, only a sincere heart. If you miss the ideal window, use the window of mercy. But next year, prepare yourself. Mark it on the calendar. October 31st, 11 p.m. Prepare the three objects in advance and do it at the right time. And now, the last thing, the most important thing. If you've made it this far in this video, if you've learned about the three objects and the complete protocol, you now carry a responsibility. You are a bearer of a revelation that has saved families. Don't go preaching in the streets, don't force anyone. But if someone comes to you afraid, with the feeling that their house isn't protected, you now know what to teach them. You can now help, and that's no accident. You were chosen to receive this now because someone around you will need it soon. In the comments below, type "shielded." If you're going to do the protocol at 11 p.m. tonight, type "preparing." If you're gathering the three objects now, type "Friday." If you've already passed October 31st and will use the emergency protocol, or type "next year." If you're preparing for next October, I want to know, I want to follow along, and more importantly, you'll create a community of protected homes that testify to one another. May Jesus Christ crucified seal your home. May the salt of the covenant purify your dwelling. May the rosary of Mary intercede for your family, and may the shield of Padre Pio be invincible over you this night and on all the nights of your life.